Hello and welcome back. I'll be continuing my journey to the US premiere of Hayao Miyazaki's new film, The Boy and the Heron. For those of you just joining, I'm revisiting my 5 favorite Miyazaki movies in anticipation for his new one, releasing on December 8th. Last time, I discussed the first Studio Ghibli film I'd ever seen, Kiki's Delivery Service. Today, I'll be going back and looking at one of, if not his most, revered films that he has directed, Spirited Away.
The wind's pulling us in.
What is it?
Come on, let's go in. I want to see what's on the other side.
I'm not going. It gives me the creeps.
Don't be such a scaredy cat, Chihiro. Let's just take a look.
So I think that a lot of Ghibli fans have this film as their favorite or second favorite out of Miyazaki's works. And that makes me a little hesitant to say that it's just a tad lower for me. That's not to say I think it's a bad movie. In fact, I think it's great. I just connect a little more with some of his other movies than I did with this one. It's still one of my favorite films by Miyazaki, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. Spirited Away was the first animated film that showed me the potential of animation and what it could be. I remember thinking that it looked sort of weird when I first heard about it, yet very intriguing. It's not only one of my favorite animated films, it's also one of my favorite films of all time. By now, this is probably the Ghibli film that I've seen the second most amount of times, thanks to G-Kids and their annual Ghibli Fest. I even had the chance to watch the theatrical release of the stage play, which honestly I didn't think I'd enjoy, but it turned out to be a delightful experience.
Four path tokens at once. Come on, get to work, you little rats! Yeah, I'm Kamaji, slave to the boiler that heats the baths. Move it, you stupid sootballs!
Before diving into this, something I did want to mention is that there's this popular theory that the film is a metaphor for human trafficking and brothels. After reading into it, I can see where this theory came from, but I personally do not think it is. I'll leave a link for the article that briefly explains the theory if you want to take a look. It also explains what Miyazaki did want to do with this film, so there's that as well. I'm all for coming up with your own interpretation for movies, but Miyazaki himself has debunked this theory and I'm going to take his word for it. But if this theory is something you want to buy into, then more power to you. Honestly, I think if Miyazaki did want to make a film about those subject matters, he would straight up do it without hesitation. I don't think he's afraid of tackling mature topics of that nature, as he has done so on occasion.
Hello? Aren't you getting wet out there?
Zach, hurry up!
Coming! I'll leave the door open for you.
Probably the aspect that sticks out the most for me is the growth that Chihiro goes through. At the beginning of the film, her family had just left their hometown and are moving into their new one. Chihiro isn't very excited about the move and mopes around the backseat of the car, possibly indicating that she isn't that open to change. She also seems quite timid and hesitant of things she's unfamiliar with, as her body language is very reserved when her parents attempt to explore the abandoned amusement park. Although, when she is thrown into this mysterious world of spirits, she learns to be courageous, take obstacles head on, and embrace her new experiences. Two corresponding occasions that I think portrays this perfectly are the scenes where she heads down to the boiler room and the scene where she tries to reach Haku in Yubaba's office. When she heads down to the boiler room, she's very hesitant and takes her time to simply head down some stairs. She is suddenly frightened by one of the steps collapsing, causing her to sprint the rest of the way down, screaming. On the contrary, when she's trying to reach Yubaba's office, she makes her way to the outside of the bathhouse and climbs alongside the piping of the building, arguably the more dangerous stunt of the two. After experiencing all that she has more resolve despite the risk. You can see the determination in her face. She wastes no time and decisively runs along the pipes as they give way. Chihiro goes from being a scared and whiny kid to someone who is grounded, sensible, and open-minded. Chihiro's development throughout the story can also be interpreted as how extreme the transition between childhood and adulthood is. At first, she's too nervous to do anything and struggles at performing most jobs. No one seems to like her and they only view her as a burden. Obviously not used to this kind of environment, she has a couple of breakdowns, but she doesn't quit, as working at the bathhouse is the only way to save her parents. She eventually begins to prove herself and becomes more confident in herself and her actions, especially after cleaning that one river spirit. By the end, the mere event of moving into a new town is less daunting to her. I believe there's emphasis put on names as well. When Chihiro begins working for Yubaba, Yubaba takes her original name and gives her the moniker Sen, and throughout the film, Haku reminds her of her name so she doesn't forget who she is. I feel like this can indicate that people who enter the adult world can sometimes lose themselves and forget who they are. Chihiro was able to maintain her identity with Haku's help, and in return, she was able to remind Haku who he is, the Kohaku River, restoring his own sense of identity. And that's why I love Spirited Away. This is one of Miyazaki's deepest films, and I don't even know if I properly covered what he intended to say with this movie. It is one of the more difficult Ghibli films for me to pick apart, but I still adore it regardless. It is actually the first Ghibli film that I got to see in theaters, not during its initial release though, but rather when GKIDS first started re-releasing Ghibli films back in theaters. I had already seen it by then, but it was still a wonderful experience to witness this on the big screen. This film is one of the most influential animated films to date, as many animators who grew up with this film are now in the industry, and slip in references every now and then into their works. Anyways, I hope you'll join me next time as I continue my journey to The Boy and the Heron. Okay, bye.